I think we should try an open marriage. Sarah's words hung in the air like smoke, seemingly casual but laden with hidden meaning. We were sitting at our favorite breakfast spot, the one where I'd proposed just 8 months ago. The golden band on her finger caught the morning light as she stirred her untouched latte. I set down my coffee cup, studying her face. At 32, Sarah was still as beautiful as the day we'd met. All honey blonde hair and green eyes that could charm anyone into anything. But there was something different in those eyes now, something I couldn't quite read. An open marriage? I kept my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Before we're even married? Sarah leaned forward, her designer blouse shifting to reveal the edge of the tattoo I'd watched her get on our third date. Think about it, Jason. We're young, successful. Why should we limit ourselves? It's 2024. Everyone's more fluid about relationships now. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used to convince her clients to sign contracts at her PR firm. Smooth, reasonable, perfectly crafted to make you feel like an idiot for disagreeing. But something wasn't adding up. How long have you been thinking about this? She shrugged, a practiced gesture. A while. I've been reading about ethical non-monogamy, and it just makes sense. We can still be committed to each other while exploring other connections. My mind flashed to the late nights at work, the new gym membership, the sudden interest in after-hours networking events. The pieces were falling into place like a sick game of Tetris. Is there someone specific you have in mind? I asked, watching her face carefully. God, no. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back slightly. This isn't about anyone else. It's about us being mature enough to handle a modern relationship. I took a long sip of my now cold coffee, thinking about the mortgage we'd just signed, the venue deposits we'd paid, the future we'd planned. Then I thought about the text I'd glimpsed on her phone last week. Miss you already, from someone named Mike W. I told myself it was probably work-related. Now I wasn't so sure. Okay, I said finally, watching her eyes widen in surprise. Let's try it. Really? She looked both thrilled and slightly suspicious. You're okay with this? I smiled, pulling out my phone. More than okay. In fact, I just matched with someone on Bumble last week. I wasn't going to pursue it, but since we're being open now. The color drained from Sarah's face so fast I thought she might faint. You're already on dating apps. Just keeping my options open. I echoed her earlier words. Isn't that what you wanted? I got a date tonight, actually. Jessica. She's a pediatric surgeon. Sarah's hands were shaking as she reached for her latte. Tonight? Don't you think we should discuss the parameters first? Set some ground rules? Why wait? You've clearly been planning this for a while. I'm just catching up. I stood up, dropping enough cash to cover both our drinks. Don't worry about dinner. I'll grab something with Jessica. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard Sarah calling my name, her voice tinged with panic. I didn't turn around. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe clearly. The game she'd started was about to take an unexpected turn, and I was finally ready to play. I hadn't actually matched with anyone on Bumble. But Sarah didn't need to know that. Not yet. By the time I got back to our condo, I had 3 missed calls and 12 texts from her. I ignored them all and called my best friend instead. She finally did it, I told Mark when he picked up. Asked for an open relationship this morning. Shit. Mark's voice crackled through the speaker. Mike from accounting? You knew. The betrayal hit like a physical blow, making me grip the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. I saw them at District Bar last week. Thought you should hear it from her first. He paused. What are you going to do? I looked at our engagement photos on the wall, Sarah and me laughing at sunset, her head thrown back in that carefree way that had made me fall for her. I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Can we please talk about this? Come home early today. Instead, I called Rachel, my colleague's sister who'd been not so subtly flirting with me at the company Christmas party. She was gorgeous, smart, and most importantly, she actually was a pediatric surgeon. Within 20 minutes, we had plans for dinner. When Sarah burst through the door at 4:30, I was adjusting my tie in the bedroom mirror. What are you doing? Her voice was shrill, nothing like her usual controlled PR tone. We need to discuss boundaries before either of us starts dating. I turned, taking in her disheveled appearance. Mascara slightly smudged, blouse buttoned wrong. Lunch meeting with Mike, I guessed. Funny, you didn't seem concerned about boundaries when you were fucking Mike from accounting. She stumbled back like I'd slapped her. How did you dash? No? Does it matter? I checked my watch. I have reservations at Maven at 7. Rachel's looking forward to it. Rachel? Sarah's voice cracked. Kevin's sister Rachel? The one who's been trying to get in your pants since December. The very same. I grabbed my jacket. She's exactly the kind of connection I'm interested in exploring. Isn't that what you wanted? To be modern and fluid. Sarah moved to block the doorway, her eyes wild. You can't go out with her. She's practically family. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Family? Like Mike was family when you started sleeping with him 3 months after our engagement. It wasn't like that. Tears were streaming down her face now, ruining what was left of her makeup. Mike was a mistake. I ended it last week. That's why I suggested opening things up. To be honest about everything. How convenient. I moved past her, catching a whiff of unfamiliar cologne on her blouse. Honesty after the fact isn't honesty, Sarah. It's damage control. And you're only doing it because someone at work saw you and threatened to tell me. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Please, Jason. I love you. We can fix this. I gently removed her hand. You don't want an open relationship, Sarah. You want retroactive permission for your cheating and insurance against your guilt. But here's the thing. I'm taking you up on your offer anyway. Maybe I'll find someone who understands that loyalty doesn't need modern relationship frameworks to exist. I'll call off the wedding, she threatened, her voice trembling. No need. I headed for the door. I already did. Check your email. I contacted the venue this afternoon. Turns out they have an excellent cancellation policy for cases of infidelity. The coordinator was very sympathetic. As I walked to my car, I could hear her crying through the open window of my condo. My phone was exploding with notifications. Sarah, her sister, her best friend, even her mother. I turned it off and headed to Maven, where Rachel was waiting. Time to start exploring those new connections Sarah was so eager to embrace. Rachel was everything Sarah wasn't: direct, genuine, and refreshingly honest. Over wine and craft cocktails at Maven, she didn't play games or try to manipulate the conversation. When she touched my hand across the table, there was no hidden agenda. I'm sorry about Sarah, she said, her dark eyes full of empathy. Kevin told me things were tense, but I had no idea she was actually cheating. Neither did I, apparently. I swirled the bourbon in my glass. Though looking back, all the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. My phone had stayed off, but I could imagine the chaos unfolding. Sarah had probably called her entire support network by now, spinning the story her way. Poor Sarah, pushed into another man's arms by her cold, unfeeling fiancé. Poor Sarah, who only wanted to be honest about her needs. Poor Sarah, whose man had cruelly turned her suggestion for open communication into revenge. But Rachel's next words snapped me out of my bitter reverie. You should know, she said, leaning forward. Mike wasn't the only one. The bourbon turned to ash in my mouth. What? There was someone at the Thompson account launch party last spring. And, she hesitated, there might have been someone at her college reunion in February. The room seemed to tilt sideways. The Thompson party was 2 weeks after I'd proposed. The college reunion was when she'd insisted on going alone because I had that big project deadline. How do you know this? Rachel's expression was pained. The healthcare PR circuit is small. Sarah gets chatty when she drinks. She thought she was among friends who'd keep her secrets. I remembered all the times Sarah had come home late from industry events, lipstick slightly smudged, smelling of other people's cigarettes though she didn't smoke. How many times had she kissed me with lips that had just been pressed against someone else's skin? Tell me everything, I said. And Rachel did. For the next hour, she laid out a pattern of behavior that made me question every moment of my relationship with Sarah. The girls' trips that weren't entirely female. The networking events that were more about horizontal networking. The late nights at the office that were spent in hotel rooms instead. Why didn't anyone tell me? My voice was raw. Kevin wanted to, Rachel admitted. But Sarah always had a way of making it sound innocent. Just harmless flirting, just networking, just being friendly. She'd cry if anyone threatened to tell you. Swear she'd end things. Promise to be better. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I turned it back on without thinking. A text from Mark. Sarah's at my place with Amy. She's threatening to hurt herself. What do you want me to do? Classic Sarah, I thought bitterly. When manipulation failed, go for the nuclear option. Make everyone so worried about your mental health that they forget about what you did. I should deal with this? I said to Rachel, showing her the text. She nodded, understanding. Want company? I thought about it. Having Rachel there would drive Sarah insane, proof that I was moving on, that her actions had consequences. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. No, I said finally. I need to handle this myself. But, can I call you tomorrow? Rachel's smile was warm, genuine. I'd like that. Outside Maven. She kissed me. A soft, sweet kiss that held promise rather than deception. Felt like the beginning of something honest. Then I headed to Mark's apartment, where Sarah was about to learn that her favorite manipulation tactics wouldn't work anymore. And she was also going to learn exactly who else knew about her extracurricular activities, and for how long. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about finally seeing clearly, and letting everyone else see too. Mark's apartment was on the 10th floor of a renovated industrial building. As the elevator climbed, I thought about all the times Sarah and I had come here for game nights, dinner parties, celebrations. How many of those nights had she been texting someone else under the table? How many times had she excused herself to the bathroom to make calls? When Mark opened the door, his face was grim. She's been drinking, he warned quietly. Amy's trying to calm her down. But I could hear Sarah's voice from the living room, that particular pitch she reached when she was performing grief rather than feeling it. I'd heard it before, when she needed sympathy from clients, when she wanted to avoid consequences, when she needed to be the victim instead of the villain. You don't understand, she was saying to Amy. I only suggested opening the relationship because I wanted to be honest. I wanted to stop lying. I love Jason so much. I stepped into the room. Sarah was curled on Mark's leather couch, her makeup completely ruined now, an empty wine glass dangling from her fingers. Amy sat beside her, looking uncomfortable. Honest. My voice cut through her performance. Like you were honest about the Thompson account party? Or your college reunion? Sarah's face went white. What are you talking about? Don't. I held up my hand. Rachel told me everything. And I mean everything, Sarah. About David from the Thompson client team. About your old college boyfriend, Chris. About all those networking events that ended in hotel rooms. She shot to her feet, swaying slightly. That bitch. She's lying. She just wants you for herself. 8 people, I continued calmly. 8 different people knew about your affairs and kept quiet. Some because you manipulated them, some because they didn't want to hurt me. But they all knew. Affairs. Amy's voice was small. Sarah, you told me it was just Mike. And that was only once. Sarah whirled on her. Shut up. You don't know anything. Actually, I pulled out my phone. I have texts. Lots of them. Remember when you left your iPad logged into your iMessage at home last month? The one you use for your private conversations. Her face crumpled. You went through my messages? No, they just kept popping up while I was trying to watch Netflix. Very distracting. All those hearts and eggplant emojis from different numbers. I turned to Amy. Want to know what your best friend really thinks of your marriage? She's been sleeping with Tom for 6 months. Amy's gasp was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Tom was her husband. He didn't mean anything. Sarah reached for Amy, who recoiled. It was just sex. I was going to end it. Like you ended it with Mike? I asked. The cologne on your blouse today suggests otherwise. Mark stepped forward. Sarah, I think you should leave.
No.
She looked around wildly. None of you understand. I'm not the bad person here. Jason's the one who immediately jumped at the chance to date other people. He's probably been wanting to fuck Rachel this whole time. The difference, I said quietly, is that I waited until I had permission. You just took what you wanted and expected everyone to keep your secrets. She tried a different tactic, her voice dropping to that vulnerable whisper she used when she wanted to seem fragile. I'll get therapy. We can work through this. I'll do anything. The wedding's already canceled, I reminded her. And tomorrow, I'm calling a real estate agent about selling the condo. You've got until the end of the month to find somewhere else to live. You can't do this to me. The mask slipped, revealing the rage beneath. I'll tell everyone you abused me. I'll ruin your career. I'll dash. Go ahead. I pulled out my phone again. I've been recording this entire conversation. Add false accusations to your list of greatest hits. The fight seemed to drain out of her all at once. She sank back onto the couch, suddenly looking very small and very young. I did love you, she whispered. No, I said, feeling nothing but tired. You loved having me. There's a difference. I turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. Oh, and Sarah? Check your email again. I forwarded screenshots of your conversations with Tom to Amy's lawyer. I hear she's been looking for grounds for a favorable divorce settlement. Amy was already pulling out her phone, her hands shaking but her jaw set. As I walked out, I could hear Sarah starting to cry again, real tears this time, because her carefully constructed house of lies was finally falling apart. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Mark's apartment, I sat in my realtor's office, signing the final papers to list the condo. Sarah had moved out a week earlier, taking only her personal belongings. She'd left behind all the furniture we'd picked out together, all the wedding gifts we'd already received, all the photos of our life together. It felt symbolic somehow. She'd always been good at walking away from things, leaving others to deal with the aftermath. The story had spread through our social circle like wildfire. Amy's divorce proceedings had kicked up quite a storm, especially when other wives started checking their husbands' phones. Sarah's carefully cultivated image as the perfect fiancée, the successful PR executive, the loyal friend, had crumbled completely. Last I heard, she'd taken a job offer in Chicago, running away again, this time from the consequences of her own actions. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Just heard from Kevin. Sarah's been calling around, trying to damage control. Want to talk about it? I smiled, remembering our dinner date last night. We were taking things slow, both aware of the weight of recent events. But there was something refreshingly honest about her presence in my life. We'd spent hours just talking, laying our cards on the table, discussing our fears and hopes with a frankness that I'd never experienced with Sarah. Nothing to talk about, I texted back. Her stories don't have power anymore. My lawyer had already dealt with Sarah's attempts at revenge. The recording from Mark's apartment had been enough to shut down her threats of false accusations. The screenshots of her messages with various lovers had silenced any attempt to paint herself as the victim. Her own words had become her undoing. Mark stopped by that evening to help me pack up the last of the wedding planning materials. We found the venue contract in a drawer, along with all the deposits we'd put down. You know what's ironic? I said, holding up the venue's cancellation policy. If she hadn't pushed for that infidelity clause in the contract, because she was worried about Emmy cheating, we would have lost all the deposits. Mark shook his head, laughing. She always did think she was the smartest person in the room. She was good at it, I admitted, boxing up a pile of RSVP cards, making you think she was always 3 steps ahead, always in control. But she never understood the difference between manipulation and genuine connection. Speaking of connection, Mark said carefully, Rachel seems good for you. I thought about how Rachel had offered to help with the packing but had also respected my need to do this part alone. How she shared her thoughts and feelings directly, without games or hidden agendas. How she'd been honest about her own past relationships, her insecurities, her hopes for the future. She is, I agreed. But the best thing she did was help me see what I actually deserve in a relationship. Later that night, after Mark left, I found one last photo that had slipped behind the dresser. It was from our engagement party, Sarah beaming at the camera while I kissed her cheek. She'd posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Forever starts now." 2 hearts. I remembered how happy I'd felt that day, completely unaware that she'd slipped away during the party to text Mike, to make plans for their next meetup. The photo had captured a lie in progress, a moment of performance rather than genuine joy. I dropped it into the shredder without hesitation. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. "Dinner tomorrow? I found a new Thai place that does amazing pad Thai. Looking forward to it?" I replied, feeling lighter than I had in months. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or causing pain. Sometimes it's about walking away, about choosing yourself, about understanding that you deserve more than beautiful lies and elegant deceptions. Sometimes it's about realizing that the person you thought would be your forever was actually just a harsh lesson in what love isn't supposed to be. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that lesson leads you to something real. Thank you for listening the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next videos.